Recording in progress.
Good morning. We'll get started in just a few moments.
Buenos días, vamos a comenzar en unos momentos.
Great. So we can get started. Good morning. Warm welcome to members of the public, Federal Advisory Committee members, work group members, EPA, and other agency staff who have joined virtually. Today is the Pesticide Program Dialogue Committee meeting. My name is Jeffrey Chang, the designated federal official for the PPDC and moderator for today. If technical issues arise, please bear with us. If you have any technical questions, please email Kevin Annas at annas.kevin@epa.gov. That's ANNAS.KEVIN@EPA.gov. Accommodations, ASL cart, and translation services are available. In just a moment, I'll pass it over to the Director of the Office of Pesticide Programs, Ed Messina, to officially open the meeting. Before I do, I want to go over some quick housekeeping items as we get started today. I want to draw your attention to the interpretation button on the bottom panel of your Zoom window to the right of your screen. In just a moment, interpretation will be enabled. Regardless of your preferred language, you need to click on that button and select either English or Spanish and mute original audio to be able to fully participate in the meeting. This will place you in either the English or Spanish channel, and as we anticipate a bilingual meeting today, it is important that you choose one of these channels. For our Spanish-speaking colleagues, I will now turn it over to our interpreter, Jackie, who will provide these instructions in Spanish in the main channel.
Muy buenos días y gracias por participar en el Comité de Diálogo sobre el Programa de Pesticidas, PPDC por sus siglas en inglés. La reunión de hoy será interpretada.
Closed captioning and live transcription is available to those who use the service by clicking the closed captioning button in the bottom panel of your Zoom screen. We also have an ASL interpreter today and a CART provider. These services can also be accessed through the interpretation button used to select Spanish translation. If you are a member of the public, you will be in listening mode for the duration of the event. Members of the public who have expressed interest in providing comment during the registration period will have an opportunity to provide comment at the end of the day. Given the amount of people that have signed up, we will not be able to get to everyone today. We will call on people in the order that registrations were received, and we'll get through as many people as time will allow. You're also welcome to email comments to me at chang.jeffrey@epa.gov. PPDC and workgroup co-chairs are designated as panelists in Zoom, meaning that they can request to be recognized during the discussion sessions by using the raise hand function and can unmute themselves and activate their webcams after being called upon. It is very important that you remain muted with your webcam off unless you are recognized to speak. Please state your name and affiliation. Today's meeting is being recorded for the purpose of having meeting transcripts and minutes produced. We ask that all presenters speak slowly and clearly to ensure everyone can understand and participate fully in the meeting. This is also important for our Spanish translators. Conversations should take place orally. The chat function should be used only to contact the meeting hosts. I will now hand it over to Ed Messina, Director of the Office of Pesticide Programs, to give a welcome message. Welcome, Ed.
Jeffrey. Welcome, members of the public, for joining, and to our PPDC members. Looks like we have over 200 folks that have joined to hear about the great work that the Office of Pesticide Programs is doing, and then also to hear recommendations from our esteemed members of the Pesticide Program Dialogue Committee. Folks have heard me say this in the past, but this is one of my favorite meetings of the year, where we have twice a year, because we bring together various organizations, industry, nonprofits, universities, other associations, and it represents a broad swath of stakeholders that care about how pesticides are used in the marketplace. And we love hearing from the various stakeholders about how OPP can do a better job. So appreciate the members of this group for serving on this PPDC. And as Jeffrey will cover later, we have a pretty full agenda. I'm going to talk a little bit later on the priorities for the Office of Pesticide Programs. Right now, I'll talk a little bit about what PPDC is and the charter, and why we're meeting today. So as folks know, the Office of Pesticide Programs is entrusted with the important responsibilities of ensuring that Americans are not exposed to unsafe levels of pesticides in foods, protecting Americans from unreasonable risk, educating pesticide applicators and others who may be exposed to pesticides, and protecting the environment, special ecosystems, and wildlife from potential risks to pesticides. So, what is the Pesticide Program Dialogue Committee? PPDC is what's called a Federal Advisory Committee. It was formed in 1995 under the Federal Advisory Committee Act, or as we refer to it as a FACA, which Congress passed that statute in 1972 to create an orderly procedure by which federal agencies can seek collective advice from diverse customers, partners, and stakeholders, which is what we certainly have here with this group. The FACA establishes procedures for the management of federal advisory committees, ensures transparency of advisory committee decision making, and ensures balanced representation. PPDC supports EPA in performing its duties and responsibilities under the Federal Insecticide, Fungicide, and Rodenticide Act, the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, and the amendments to both that were processed through the Food Quality Protection Act of 1996, and the Pesticide Regulatory Improvement Act, which was recently passed, and we are currently on version 5 of that statute, and we refer to that as PREA 5. This is directly from the charter under the objectives and scope of activities. So if you go to our PPDC website, you can find the charter. You can also find the agenda for today. You can find past meetings, past presentations, and past meeting notes and transcripts for the various sessions that we've held over the many years that this group has been together. PPDC is what's called a policy-oriented committee and provides, there are no slides right now. Yeah, I'm just talking. The PPDC is a policy-oriented committee that provides policy advice, information, and recommendations to EPA. The PPDC provides a cooperative public forum to collaboratively discuss a wide variety of pesticide regulatory development and reform initiatives involving public policy and implementation issues. We also have work groups that can be formed under the Pesticide Program Dialogue Committee, the main members of that group, and the subgroups can be in place for a short period of time. And we have a number of updates from the current subgroups that are presenting today. And these work groups are sometimes formed to assist the Federal Advisory Committee with research, information gathering, and documenting and drafting support documents for the committee's considerations and duties. And a couple of the subgroups today have presentations and then also recommendations that will be provided to the to PPDC to vote on to forward, should they so choose, to EPA for consideration. And also the development of charge questions is something that the groups will do today, the subgroups. Also, as outlined in the PPDC charter, work groups and subcommittees are formed by either EPA or with EPA's approval for any purpose consistent with the charter. The subcommittees or work groups may not work independently of the chartered committee, and they must report their recommendations and advice to the chartered PPDC for full deliberation and discussion. Subcommittees or work groups have no authority to make decisions on behalf of the chartered committee, nor can they report directly to EPA. Previous work groups have explored charge questions on topics such as emerging viral pathogens, emerging agricultural technologies, farm worker and clinician training, and pesticide resistance management. These are all pressing issues that the Office of Pesticide Programs considers, and we continue to develop practical and protective approaches that work with our stakeholders based on many of the recommendations that were brought from these subcommittees and through the larger PPDC. So currently the PPDC has 3 active work groups. Many of the ones that I mentioned were sunsetted at the request of the work groups, and also given the short nature of time for the duration that these subgroups are meant to deal with specific issues. The current three active work groups are the label reform work group, which is exploring issues on how to make pesticide labels better, and also specifically through the use of digital labeling and how we can adopt a digital practice within OPP. The next work group is the farm worker work group, which deals specifically with issues affecting farm worker communities and how EPA can do a better job in understanding the concerns of farm workers. Some of the activities we've done in the past, worker protection standards, certification and training, the bilingual labeling efforts that OPP is undertaking represent things that farm workers care about and how EPA is trying to respond to those work groups' concerns. And then the cross-sector priorities work group, which was formed at the last PPDC meeting, and they are exploring charge questions for that group, and they'll have a presentation for us today, along with the other work groups that I mentioned, and they'll talk about recommendations and discussion for future activities for exploration for that newly formed cross-sectors priority work group. So Jeffrey's going to go into the agenda with a little more specificity, but in general, the label reform work group is going to present their final report after lunch. And then the PPDC members will have a chance to vote on the formal report submission to EPA, and also a vote on whether to sunset the work group at the work group suggestion. Afterwards, we'll hear from the farm worker work group and the cross sectors priority work groups, and both are presenting their draft charge questions for considerations for PPDC. And then each session will be followed by a discussion among PPDC members, and we welcome active member engagement and participation during those discussions. The other thing is, in addition to the work group updates, we had some requests from PPDC members to hear about other activities from OPP. So I will start off the today's agenda talking about the highlights of OPP priorities, what we've done so far this year, talk about workload and metrics, and then we'll hear from other work groups as well. Towards the end of the day, we'll have a session on the endangered species activities, and we'll also hear from a PPDC member on the ESA workshops that occurred in Tennessee. And then we'll conclude with public comments and also kind of moving forward, what are some topics that we want to address and wrap up today's meeting and capture any deliverables that we need for future meetings and future conversations with the committees. And again, PPDC has a history over these many years for engaging in open dialogues, respectfully sharing different opinions, really with the goal of working together as a committee and providing advice to EPA. I'm confident that the meeting today will result as it has in the past, with helpful feedback for us, and look forward to recommendations that are being made by the PPDC members, and look forward to seeing introductions from folks that I'll hand over to Jeffrey to do. And thank you to our members for your service. Over to you, Jeffrey.
Thank you so much, Ed. So Ed basically ran through the agenda for me, but um, in just a moment, I'll roll call members of the PPDC. After that, Ed will give an update on the Office of Pesticide Programs. We'll break for lunch at 12:30. Then we have the Pesticide Label Reform Work Group update, followed by the Farm Worker Work Group, and then the Cross Sector Priorities Work Group. Then we'll get into Endangered Species Act activities and state workshops. And closing out will be, talking about what we talked about for today, and then public comments. Great. And now I will roll call members of the PPDC. I will call these in alphabetical order by first name. The list of members will be shown on screen. When I call your name, please unmute your microphone and tell us your name, role, and the organization or group you represent and their mission. As a reminder, please mute your microphone when you're finished. We'll start with Alana Bears, Alexis Guild, Can anyone hear Alexis?
No.
Heard Alexis.
Yeah, I heard her.
I heard Alexis. Did
Who's
you
the
hear Alexis,
captioner? I
Jeffrey?
heard Alexis.
Looks like you're muted still, Alexis.
No, Jeffrey.
No.
I'll send a text to Jeffrey because can you hear me, Jeffrey?
I can hear you, Ed, yes.
We heard Alexis too.
Oh, you did? Huh.
We did.
Okay. Okay. Maybe she can go and you can tell me when she's done.
Okay. Thanks. Jeffrey, is it something with the selecting the English
I'm
translation
selected
piece?
English.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Do you want me to do the roll call since I
Sure.
can hear? Okay, great.
Sure.
So we've heard. So Ilana, I don't think we've heard from. I just want to confirm. Alexis Guild, we just heard from. I'll go to Alexis Temkin now. Okay. Alexis is not there, Jeffrey. Anastasia Swearington. Thank you, Anastasia. Andrew, architect. Thanks, Andrew. Anna Bender Zalm. Okay, missing Anna. Becca Berkeley. Just checking the names to see if maybe now I'm not hearing some folks. Okay, Bob Mann.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Bob Mann, Senior Director of Technical and Regulatory Affairs for the National Association of Landscape Professionals.
Thanks, Bob. Brian Verhoogstrait. Thanks, Brian. Caleb Ragland. Okay. Claudia Arietta. Claudia, I think I heard you for a second, but thanks, Claudia. Daniel Markowski.
Hello, this is Dan Markowski. I'm the technical advisor for the American Mosquito Control Association.
Thanks, Dan. Darren Kopic. Okay. David Heimer.
I'm Dave Heimer. I work for Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife. I'm the noxious weed coordinator.
Thanks. David Shaw.
Good morning, everyone. I'm David Shaw. I'm a weed scientist at Mississippi State University, and I represent the Weed Science Society of America, which is a science-based scientific organization that fosters awareness of weeds and their impact on the environment.
Thanks. Ed Hardy Kern, using full names today. Thanks. Emma Torres. Thanks, Emma. Eric Jebre. I doubt I got that correct. Yes. Thank you. Gary Pressure.
Good morning, everyone. I live and farm in Minnesota, a corn farmer in Minnesota, and a director on the Minnesota Corn Research and Promotion Council. So I'm representing the National Corn Grower Organization across 27 states and 300,000 corn growers. And our mission is to help protect and advance opportunities for corn growers. Thanks.
Thanks, Gary. George Parker. Gina Schultz. Thanks, Gina. Grant Morris. Okay. Jeffrey, before we go to the next slide, I think we had, it was Alexis.
Temkin.
Was there anybody on this slide here who did not introduce themselves? I just saw some chats going by. If you had audio problems and if you didn't introduce yourself, you can unmute now. Okay, I guess we can move to the next slide, Jeffrey. Jill Schroeder.
Good morning. I'm Jill Schrader, and I am a weed scientist at retired from New Mexico State University, and I'm here representing the Weed Science Society of America. And again, the Weed Science Society of America promotes research, education, and awareness of weeds in both managed and natural ecosystems. Thank you.
Jill. Joseph Grieswack. John Wise. Karen Reardon. Keith Jones.
Good morning, Keith Jones, Executive Director with BPIA. We're the association representing the biopesticides industry.
Kelly Bills. Kim Brown.
Kim Brown with the University of Tennessee.
Legia Duarte. Lisa Dreilinger.
Hi, good morning. Lisa Dreilinger, Global VP of Regulatory at ArcSATA. ArcSATA is a global leader in sustainable preservation.
Manu Basu. Mark Lane.
Yes, I'm Mark Lane with the Indiana University School of Public and Environmental Affairs. I'm an entomologist and former Extension Integrated Pest Management Specialist.
Millie Trevino Sauceda.
Good morning. Milly Treviño Sauceda. I'm the Executive Director with Alianza Nacional de Campesinas, which is a national alliance of farmworker women representing 18 different member organizations. And we're in 20 different states, and we cover specifically one of our priority areas is what is the use and misuse of pesticides. Thank you.
Nathan Donnelly.
Hey there, Nate Donnelly. I'm the science director at for the Environmental Health Program at the Center for Biological Diversity. And we're a national environmental nonprofit that focuses on protecting people and the environment from batshit crazy administrations that are trying to destroy the very institutions that are keeping our country livable and prosperous. And we stand in support of the many public servants who are seeing their lives upended by a bunch of spoiled tech bros who want to play government in their spare time. So looking forward to a lively day of discussion.
Thanks, Nathan. Patrick Johnson. Robert Nielsen. Thanks. Rosemary Melfi. Terry Kipley.
Hello, I'm Terry Kipley. I'm the president and CEO of CPDA. We're the Council of Producers and Distributors of Agrotechnology. We have over 80 members that provide solutions for end-to-end crop protection, meaning our members are made up of the manufacturers and distributors of adjuvants, inerts, and generic crop protection products. Our focus is to help our members get tools across the finish line of the EPA, which ultimately help growers remain sustainable.
Thanks, Terry. Wendy Sue Wheeler.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Wendy Sue Wheeler. I'm the director of the Washington State University Pesticide Resources and Education Program. The organization that I represent is APSE, the American Association of Pesticide Safety Educators. APSE's mission is to enhance public health and the environment through involvement in education, outreach, and research, which directly benefits pest managers, policymakers, and the public for nearly 2 million people across the United States. It's great to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. We received some requests to go over the audio again, so let me go back to that. So we have Spanish translation today. So regardless of your preferred language, you need to click on that button and select either Spanish, English or Spanish, and mute original audio to fully participate in the meeting. So if you're using Spanish translation, you should also click mute original audio, but if you're English, it doesn't really matter. If you should unclick this. Do not click mute original audio if you're using English. Is that clear? Okay. Thank you.
So it sounds like we did have a quorum, Jeffrey, by my loose count, but I'll rely on you for the official numbers. We did have a number of folks who were not able to announce. Was there anyone before we close this session? But was there anyone who wasn't able to announce themselves that are PPDC members that would like to? Oh, okay. Oh, Alex, I knew there was another Alex. Thanks, Alex. Go ahead.
Yeah, apologies. I just joined a little late. So yeah, my name's Alexis Temkin. I'm Vice President of Science for the Environmental Working Group, which is a nonprofit organization that works on environmental and public health issues, but specifically on pesticides related to health effects associated with pesticide exposure for general population and farm workers. Thanks.
Thanks, Alexis. Anybody else? Okay.
Thank you, Ed. And Grant Morris is here too. He's not able to speak right now, though. But yes.
Okay. Thanks, Jeffrey.
Thank you.
Yeah, if you're here and not able to, and we're not hearing you, just please throw something in the chat so we can record your presence.
Before we jump into Ed's session, I want to remind our members and the public of some upcoming items for the rest of the year. The PPDC charter is set for renewal in September. We will also be soliciting new members for the PPDC this summer. Membership is renewed every 2 years, with members being able to serve a maximum of 3 terms. I'll reach out to you individually on your status in the coming weeks. We welcome the public to apply. A Federal Register notice will be published with details and a listserv sent out at a later date. Thank you. And now we can move on to Ed's presentation.
Jeffrey, I'll start. For this presentation, I will have slides, so let me know if you don't see them. And let me start sharing. Still sharing, hang on. Okay, so that should be in a format that folks can see. Jeffrey?
I can see it, yes.
Okay, great. All right, so hello everyone. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Ed Messina. I'm the Director of the Office of Pesticide Programs, and this is the PPDC Office of Pesticide Programs update, recent activities, accomplishments, what our workload looks like. As folks have heard me talk about this before, I sort of frame things as the people, the processes, and the technology supporting the mission. So you'll see how this presentation sort of follows that. We've got the people part, the priorities, the processes, technology, a number of new active ingredients that have been approved, registration and registration review highlights, some of the recent policy updates, and then a reminder of the great crop tours that we have been on this year and also plan to go on to make sure we're connecting with the growers who are out there using the technologies we approve. And then we'll do thank you and a short time for questions. We have about a little less than an hour for this, and I've got a couple of slides to go through. So on the people side, letting you know a couple of folks that have moved around. So this is how I generally orient our org chart. I have the science divisions to the right-hand side, the health effects division, environmental fate effects division, and the biological and economic analysis division. Those are the science organizations within OPP that are providing information on human health impacts, environmental impacts, and then benefits. And they provide that information generally to the registration division and the pesticide reevaluation division. Registration division doing the new registrations that come in, and of course the pesticide reevaluation division doing the review of those pesticides that are in the marketplace on at least every 15-year frequency. And then we have the antimicrobials division and biopesticide divisions. They are mainly self-contained, and they address the antimicrobials of the world, hospital disinfectants, and then as an example. And then the Biopesticides and Pollution Prevention Division addressing pesticides that are tend to be from naturally occurring substances, and then also the genetically modified plants and organisms that are related to pest protection. So the folks that are in blue are some changes that have occurred since the last PPDC update. Anita Pease has announced her retirement from the Antimicrobials Division. So that position will soon be vacant, and we've already done a search and done interviews for folks to replace Anita, although she is very irreplaceable in that role and has been there managing that division through COVID, and we will definitely miss her and wish her well in her next chapter. In the Biopesticide and Pollution Prevention Division, Madison Lee, who was the director for that division, she got a fun job out in California, back home. And so she's working for California DPR right now. So I think she's moving across the coast, but working on similar activities in the pesticide space in California. And so that position is vacant currently, and we're doing, again, a search for an acting division director for the Biopesticides Pollution Prevention Division. Sticking around with us, Billy Smith is still the Registration Division Director. Lots of activities on process improvements happening there that I'll go into, and they are squarely in the mix of looking at how OPP is going to deliver on some of its metrics and commitments that you'll see later on in my slides. And then the Pesticide Reevaluation Division, Ann Overstreet remains the director there. In the Health Effects Division, Dana Vogel, the director. Dana Spatz is acting as the deputy director because Don Lott was promoted to the division director for the Biological and Economic Analysis Division. So he left a space.
Don Wilbur.
Don Wilbur. Sorry,
Don
Lott
Lott retired several years ago.
He did. Thanks, Liz.
But that
Thanks
was a
for the
nice
save.
flashback.
That was a nice, yeah, thanks for the nice save. Don Wilbur. Because there is only one Don Lott in the world. But Don Wilbur is the acting director for the biological, or he's the permanent director for the Biological and Economic Analysis Division. And then the Environmental Fate and Effects Division, when Jan Matusko has left that position, is vacant. We'll be doing an announcement soon for our selection. And Amy Blankenship and Brian Anderson have been stepping up to sort of share that role while Jan has been vacated the position. So those are some of the updates for Office of Pesticide Programs. We still have many folks in the IO too. Liz Vizard was the one who just saved me on the Don snafu. She's the deputy director for programs, and then Leo Gregarian is the deputy director for management. Thanks, Liz, for coming on screen. Monique Perron, senior science advisor. Catherine Aubie in charge of our endocrine disruptor screening program, for which we've also made some significant strides this year on that program. And then Dan Sheff is leading our digital transformation as our digital transformation advisor. Okay, so let's talk about priorities. As folks may know, the administrator has put out his 5 pillars for EPA. Clean air, land, and water for every American is pillar 1, and we are participating in that pillar. Restoring American energy dominance is the next one. Pillar 3 is permitting reform, cooperative federalism, and cross-agency partnership, for which we have many activities under that. Making the United States the artificial intelligence capital of the world. We do have some AI projects that we are looking at, and as we look to digital labeling and increase the digital maturity of the Office of Pesticide Programs, how we can use artificial intelligence to speed up some of our decision making and aid in our decision making is something we're exploring. And then the last pillar is related to auto jobs, which we don't have any activities. I think somebody is off mute right now, and if we're hearing some background noise. Okay, so under pillar 1, clean air, land, and water, the activities that we've cited under this pillar is utilizing new approach methodologies. That's developing new techniques that can reduce animal testing and provide for new state-of-the-art science. So that's a pillar, and related to pillar one. Integrating endocrine disrupting screening program decisions and data needs into fit for decisions is another area where we're participating in that pillar. And then refining the pesticide use limitation areas. We just did an announcement on that. I've got a slide later on, and all these slides will be on the website after my presentation for folks to go back to. But recent refining pesticide use limitation areas and updating maps and protecting listed species under our critical habitat requirements under the Endangered Species Act is continuing under the administration. That's one of our priorities. Permitting reform, cooperative federalism, and cross-agency partnership. We've really been focused, I would say, pretty intently on reducing the backlog of PREA actions and non-PREA actions, continuing with our transparency along the lines of how we're doing with reducing that backlog, working with industry on performance metrics and performance data to show how we're making progress, and then also, of course, working internally and externally on process improvements. So these are all things related to, cooperative federalism, permitting reform, and cross-agency partnership. Of course, working with our states and the recent collaborations, SPIREG and ABCO, and the various meetings that we share information, and many of the work groups, cross work groups that have state and EPA officials represent the work that's happening under Pillar 3. And you've probably heard the administrator mention the backlog that exists in OPP and the desire to increase efficiencies to continue to increase throughput for those decision making. So these are our specific FY25 goals. Many of these are in my performance agreement specifically. So in the spirit of transparency, wanted to let you know, we are putting our money where our mouth is in terms of having deliverables. So our goal is to have 30 new active ingredients completed by September of 2025. Many of these goals are, I would consider, stretch goals. They are aggressive. They're not going to be easy to make, but that's kind of where we're headed. I've got a slide later on, and we've been hitting a lot of our marks on trying to get new active ingredients out the door. And so far, we've got about 6 or 8, and we're hoping to have another, I would say, 20 or so to try to strive to meet 30 new AIs by September of 2025. Also, new uses. That's been an area where, policy considerations and developing ESA strategies and how we address new uses for ESA compliance has caused us to, create a bit of a backlog for new uses. So we're striving to do 40 new uses this year as well. And here's where you see some of the backlog numbers. So one of the goals is reduce the overall backlog, and that's cases that are already past due. So I've got a couple of slides later that show the actual total portfolio of what we have in-house, which is about 16,000 actions, and many of those actions are already past their due dates. So the non-PREA cases from the baseline in 2024, which was about 14,000 actions in the backlog, we're hoping to reduce that down to 10,000 actions by the end of the fiscal year, reducing the overall backlog of cases past their due date for notification and amendments. That's a specific area that industry has asked us to target, and the baseline was about 4,000 when we started, and we're hoping to be down to 3,000 actions. That's a metric we think we're actually going to do better than 3,000 actions, down to 3,000 actions. So this is one we're actually on track, depending on how many come in, because these are short and quick actions. So we could get a slug of new actions, but we're hoping to be down to about 3,000 actions by the end of this fiscal year. And then lastly, reduce the average days late and percentage of cases late for completed PREA actions from the FY24 average about 170 days. So on average, when we complete an action, a PREA action, we're about 170 days past what that PREA date, original PREA date was. And then we're about the number of actions that are late was about 76%. So any movement in the positive direction for both these metrics is considered success. Believe it or not, that'll be a hard one to make because it really depends on the number of actions that we get done, and we're still dealing with the backlog. So that average could increase as we get rid of some of the older cases because this is based on completed PREA actions. Also, part of our goals, preliminary work plans, final work plans, proposed interim or final decisions, interim decisions, and then final decisions. We're continuing with our registration review work. I've got a slide later on that goes into more detail on some of the metrics and how we're doing there. And that's a priority for us in addition to doing registration actions, but completing our registration review decisions and really trying to get towards final decisions, which means working on addressing Endangered Species Act and endocrine disruption. And then once we've dealt with those, being able to do cumulative risk assessments as well so that we can issue more final decisions as we progress through registration review. Also, one of our goals, no surprise, is implementing the office-wide digital transformation to move our data from our legacy apps to a cloud-based format. So we are striving to continue to digitize the office pesticide programs to increase the data visualization piece and the efficiencies associated with that. So speaking of process improvements, we've committed to do 6 office-wide process improvements or lean projects to provide measurable results for increasing the speed and timeliness of pesticide applications. Also desiring to manage our FTE levels within the FY25 enacted payroll budget. For those, just a reminder, the FY25 budget was basically the continued the 24 budget, so it was sort of a flat line from 25. We'll see what the FY26 budget brings, and then we'll manage those FTE levels accordingly. Fostering strong collaboration with federal, state, NGOs, and industry associations. Again, that pillar 3 goal squarely fits within this OPP goal. And then appropriately representing the agency priorities and policies at various speaking engagements, federal, state, NGO, and industry associations, and those meetings while keeping resource constraints and backlog goals in mind. So really focusing, as you can see, on reducing the backlog of actions that we have in-house. So what have we done to meet that? So since January of 2025, the non-PREA backlog has actually decreased from about the 13,000 to just under 10,000. So we're continuing to make progress there. The MyPest app, which relates to transparency in providing information to registrants about where their actions are in flight. We've done 2 versions of that through our digital transformation. We're doing a 3rd version for industry so they can see their actions and surfacing more of the internal science dates that show progress on those actions moving through the system. For the first time, in many cases, registrants can see their entire portfolio. I think that's also helping us, clean out some of the older actions to understand, is this action still something, we've had it in-house, we have it in our records. Is it something that registrants still want us to work on? We're having conversations about ensuring that we can focus on registrants' highest priority actions, given the resources that we have and that the priority setting that we'd like to undertake with registrants. Also, PREA 5 deliverables. So there are many, the PREA 5 is the statute that we receive fees for and funding. It funds about a 1/3 of our budget. Along with PREA 5, there are many deliverables. So we've been working on the many things that are in there. I've got a slide later on that articulates many of the things that are in PREA 5. And then continuing work on digital labeling and making pesticide labels easier to submit, review, and ultimately for consumers to to read, which crosses both pillars under the clean air, land, and water, and then also permitting reform. So as I mentioned, these are some of the deliverables that are in the PREA 5 statute. There's a website devoted to a scorecard for how we're doing on these deliverables. I would say 95% of them we've been on time and completed. There's a couple at the bottom that we're still working on, but that are pretty important. The third-party audit, which is a requirement to have a contractor look at our processes, do interviews with industry, doing interviews internally with OPP to think about ways and provide recommendations for how OPP can improve its processes. So we look forward to receiving that report from that third-party auditor sometime in the fall of this year. And then we'll try to implement those things in the coming fiscal year. So it could be, fall this year is kind of when we're expecting the report. And then training. So the other PREA 5 requirement is that we implement and hire third party. We're using a contractor, and then we'll ultimately use a grantee to provide training to new staff on science reviews. And also, really, what it's helped us do at the outset is compile all the training that we have already in-house and that we can better format and then provide in a more packaged way for OPP staff as they are, learning their roles in their respective roles for processing pesticide applications. Other efforts in terms of process improvements, industry coalition sent a letter to OPP in January asking OPP to weigh in on and providing support for some of the ongoing process improvements that OPP had. So these are the ones that are listed in that letter: reducing the non-PREA backlog, updating 9810. 9810 talks about things that can be notification versus amendments versus non-notification. So moving more of the items maybe into the notification and non-notification bin as part of an update for 9810. Revising the CSF or confidential statement of formula. There's been a number of efforts there working with industry to make that more streamlined. Predictability for acute tox and product chem review times. Also looking at an update to 98.1. These are sort of product chemistry issues and related to potential self-certifications for some of the items that are in the dossier that comes to us for review. Structured and digital labeling efforts, another priority, and you're going to hear from the group later on and recommendations for EPA, and we're fully embracing as we move to digitize more of our work, how we can do better there. Greater use of our Salesforce CRM or customer relations management software in the science divisions. So whereas the registration divisions and PRD are able to sort of show and surface due dates and deadlines, the science divisions are doing the same thing to surface their internal dates to the registering divisions, so they can understand and provide a better forecast for when things will actually get done. And we can also sort of keep track of where things are in the backlog internally to OPP within the science division. So that's happening, and I've got some slides that sort of visually show kind of what that looks like. ISB, our information support branch, where the intake happens, trying to do some process improvements there as well. So thanks for the many folks that have been participating in these process improvement efforts and these lean efforts, working with industry and other stakeholders to ensure that we are being as efficient as we can. So we're committing to the ones that are in that letter. There's other projects as well. And sort of kind of binning these into, what are the types of process improvements that, that's more of sort of a list of things we're doing, but what are the real sort of process improvements we're doing? So, tracking is a big piece, better tracking, better communication of where things are, reporting, and also, where the registration and registration review deliverables are, thinking about, the huddle boards that we had where the team huddles around the work and understands where things are in flight and, where the backlogs are. And we're using, visual management, and I've got some examples of what that looks like across all of OPP, including the science divisions, to kind of surface where the work is and where the bottlenecks are and how we're doing on timeliness. The other thing that we're doing in the category of how can you, have some process improvements, in addition to visualizing the work, there's the standardization of the work. So making sure we have appropriate SOPs, templates that make it easy for industry to submit data in a format that can be used. So if, we have spent a lot of contractor money taking industry reports, putting them in a format we can use, and creating what's called the data evaluation record, or DER. So if we can actually template the submissions so it's easier for staff to sort of find the information, it makes the review that much more quicker. So things like standardizing the DER templates, the technical screens, what guidance to registrants I'm providing, what benefits information we're looking for as part of the review, and how that information can be presented, ESA data as well, human health data. So really sort of standardizing the way data comes into us. So the people that are reviewing it are accustomed to where that data is, and then it's also sort of readily accessible, and you can understand whether something is missing or not pretty quickly. So once we've standardized things, once we're able to get our data in a digital format, we can automate a lot of the tools. And this is approaching the beginning of using AI. It's sort of easy AI, I would say, where you can automate many of the reviews that are happening. You think about some of the things that are called gold seal letters, or even like an establishment number or getting a registration number. If the request is coming in and it's pinging a database to determine whether something should be approved, if it's simple automation, we can have the system do many of those things in the background, and then surface up to the employee a recommendation to say, yep, I've checked the database, this is good to go, and do you want to automatically generate a letter? Here's click one button, and all of that sort of happens. That can increase and use automation for many of the, I would say, administrative processes that exist for many of the actions that are within OPP. Certainly, we're going to need the scientists to, do the real scientific work, to make those, tough scientific calls. So we're not looking at, replacing the real scientists with PhDs with AI, at this point, or anytime soon. So, we still, no one's invented currently a, AI toxicologist. So we really need those folks to be doing that work. But we can really also make it easier for those folks by where there is automation, exploring the use of automation and exploring AI tools to make those reviews go more quickly. We're also moving resources around a little bit to focus on the backlog. So BEAD and HED and PRD and RD are sharing resources. So BEAD folks are helping with product chem and acute tox reviews for RD and AD. Expansion of the registration review label is happening with AD pitching in as well, and then also sharing regulatory expertise and staff across PRD and RD. For similar actions, similar chemicals, right? So PRD and RD, there are staff within both divisions that kind of know those chemicals, and how making sure we're sharing that regulatory expertise around, PRD and RD. Fast track amendments, also looking at strategies and lean efforts to increase the throughput there. And then we had some activities related to some actions within AD that hadn't been closed out. So I would say a lot of the a lot of the process improvements, a lot of the improvements that you're seeing in the backlog numbers are related to process improvements. There is some data cleanup because, again, anytime you are displaying and looking at your work and arraying it, you're finding areas where, wow, we didn't realize we had all this work over here. What is this? Let's look at this. And as you peel back, and as we're looking at MyPest and the integration there, some of these actions are probably older and aren't really needed anymore. So that's at least a percentage of the reduction in backlog. It's not the majority of it. It's not it's not insignificant, but it's not the only thing driving I would say, the reduction in the backlog. But there is a component of that exists, and so AD is looking at some of their cases, and all the divisions are looking at their portfolio to ensure, now that we have the data, what actions are priorities, what are still live actions, because we do have, as you can tell, we've got 15,000 actions in house, or 15,000 things to do. We need to understand, of those 15,000 things, what are the real priority actions, that we're focusing on, and what are some of the other things that are, associated with the data that we're receiving, so that those efforts are underway. We also, an example of sort of what this process improvement outcome looks like is in April, for an OPP update, we announced that we were just going to accept one submission of the data matrix. We'd spent a lot of time redacting data matrices when they were requested by stakeholders, and it just seemed like much of the information in there was not confidential business information. So we worked with industry. We now only have one submission. It's in electronic format, and then it is able to be shared publicly, and it creates more transparency. It reduces the burden that was occurring for this process, and this was sort of an example of the outcome of looking at process improvements, and then how do you actually effectuate and make sure that you're capturing the improvements that were envisioned by your lean efforts. And this is sort of an example of where we put out the OPP update for how we're processing the data matrices. All right, so top line digital transformation. Now we're going to the technology piece, which is related to process improvements, but just want to remind folks, as we go through this digital transformation for OPP, there's sort of three big main areas, and they're all equally important, and they're all pretty big, heavy lifts that we've been working on for a while, but we have some successes to point out. So one of the first, and I would say the biggest lifts that folks don't necessarily see outside the walls of OPP, are moving the data off of old servers with old software, with old apps, into a newer system, the cloud, with newer apps, and being able to then kind of use the data as an asset, versus it being siloed in many different databases currently across these old servers. So that effort is underway. Moving data off of old servers is a bit of an archaeological dig on how the data is connected, how the apps are being used. And so when you move things, you also, and this is the underpinning of, all of the registration activities that we're doing, and re-registration activities. So you don't want to just move the data and then have it break, so that we're in the middle of all the things we're trying to get done, and we're sort of stuck. So that does create a need for some forensics to happen, so that when you move the data, you're just not going to be dead in the water. And so those actions are happening. They're being monitored at sort of the highest levels within the agency, with our new CIO, and support is being provided there to make sure that move happens well. And we're still looking and hoping to have our data move by the, I would say, September, October timeframe. We kind of want to do it at the beginning of the fiscal year as well, in terms of reporting out data and metrics. I imagine when we do this move, there probably could be some additional data that we find. Not all of the workflows that OPP has are currently in the electronic format. We get some workloads and workflows haven't been built out yet. So, as we start the next fiscal year, it's possible through this data move and through moving more workflows into the CRM, we have more items that we're going to need to kind of do the forensics and understand where they are in flight. And then also we're going to try to add things that are currently not in digital format into the digital format, and then be able to account for those measures and metrics as we're using the new systems. The other piece is the process automation piece, data visualization, and things like the DCI builders, process mapping, reducing the time to delivery. That's the science visualizations, and it's kind of how we use the new digital footprint and how our workflow looks. And then the third piece, also important, as I mentioned, is kind of how do we surface the data that OPP uses to registrants and the public? How can we develop an app that enables somebody to look at a digital label in a format and really serve up information that they need at their fingertips, and get rid of the extraneous information that they may not need at the time? Having our labels more usable, more seamless, more customer friendly is certainly another big part of one of our goals for the digital transformation update. So now that we have this data in a place that we're able to scale it and look at it, there are many dashboards that we've created to help us understand what is how is OPP performing. This is just an example of the many things we have, but if you look at kind of all the cases that we had in house, the highest level being generally 2023, where we had about 21,000 actions in house. We're down to, pending today, about 12,000 pending actions, and we started the year with 15,000, and as you recall, about 13,000 those were already late and in what's called the backlog. So these are all cases, and then all PREA actions that continue to increase. So each fiscal year, this is sort of where we ended the fiscal year, and then what we have pending. So you can see that the number of PREA actions has increased from about 21,000 to 2,100 to 2,200. And then all non-PREA actions, as PREA 5 has asked us to focus on that pretty specifically, we've been reducing the number of active cases we have, and thus reducing the backlog. So we're at about 10,000 actions that we have right now. And the notification and amendments, the backlog for that and the total cases that we carried was pretty significant, almost 10,000 actions, and we're down to the 3,000 number that we're hoping to achieve. So we started at about 4,000 to 5,000, and now we're down to the 3,000, and which is, if you recall, was one of the goals. So just really, kind of a pretty easy dashboard on our performance metrics. This is my own personal dashboard that I get to log into, and it's all real-time data. This is obviously a screenshot, but generally when I'm looking at it, it's real-time data. So this is the amount we've received since January, the amount we've completed since January, the change since January, positive or negative, received in the month, and so we're doing more each month. And I can click on to the right. This is everything. So I can click on what does non-PREA look like, what does PREA look like, what does each division look like, how are we doing in each category, amendments, new AIs, new products, new uses, other, which is also, pretty important. Other includes the M009 determination. So even though it's other, it's still a pretty important category. And then the non-PREA categories, I can click on each of the non-PREA categories, 18 and 24Cs, amendments, cancellation, data that's provided, incidents, and other within the non-PREA. And then average days, late, backlog, median days. You can see average versus median. You know, if we're getting rid of median's probably a better measure of how we're doing, because it gets rid of sort of those outliers of, you know, the good news is, you know, if we're completing a case that's been here a while, that's good, right? We want to, you know, make sure we're completing them and not forgetting about them, and that could skew the average up, but the median sort of helps us understand what that sort of looks like. And then backlogs, and then changing the backlog since January. And then also here's some, you know, circles on PREA completed this year, and sort of how late and what our percentage of late versus on time. So right now, you know, about 36% of the PREA actions we're doing are on time. Not the best score, but, you know, it's continuing to improve. And then again, another chart. This basically tells me for non-PREA actions minus gold seals, how we're doing. So the red is incoming, or this line right here. And so for many years, we received more than we completed, which is the blue line. COVID, we were able to complete a little more than we were getting in. And recently, this was some of the reductions from the backlog, and, you know, moving over to the new system and getting rid of some of that data. But we've also been recently maintaining and doing more cases than we get in, and that's for non-PREA actions. This is, as I mentioned, this is a screenshot from one of our science division's dashboards. So in addition to my dashboards, HED has their dashboard. This is how they're doing on their on-time delivery, how many tasks are late. Kind of the goals are here to, you know, keep 16 days. They're actually, you know, beating their delivery days for what their goal was. You know, this would be if they were 30 days for all of their activities, that would put them in the red. Days to complete new uses, they're at about 230 days, which, you know, we picked 270 as kind of the goal, or, you know, where you'd start being concerned, and then red would be where we want to avoid. And the next slide is, you know, what is the total completion that HED hopes to get done this year? So the total number of new uses, and then completed draft risk assessments, and kind of the goal is, you know, about 50-ish, and they're at 35 now. And so how are we doing throughout the year? And then you can see the workload, or sort of what's in progress for April, May, June, July, and things that are sort of pending, to sort of show you, all right, you know, we've got a pretty big slug in June, or things that are coming up due in June. This is a screenshot of the MyPest dashboard, or a mock-up of the MyPest dashboard from the version 2. Again, it's got all the pending actions that the registrant has. These completion dates are filled in as we do. It's got all their current applications, all their products. We're hoping to launch a registration review module as well for any document collection information requests that we have put out there, so folks could see those all in one place. And then we're going to surface some of the internal science dates that'll be linked to the dashboard that I just showed you for HED, for EFED, and for BEAD. So folks can see, oh, it looks like it moved out of HED. I'm waiting on EFED, and we can avoid having the registrants have to continually just pick up the phone and talk to the product manager and say, hey, where's my action and what's happening? We can have those product managers focused on getting the work done, creating efficiencies, versus you know, answering phone calls and on, you know, hey, where's my action? All the registrants who sign up for this, and we've got I think over 2,000 at this point. I could be wrong. It's definitely in the over 1,000 that have signed up, that are registrants to view their portfolios. All right, so some quick. We got about 10 minutes left. Wanted to talk about some of the. I got about 10 more slides left, but this will go more quickly. Propose new AIs. As I mentioned, it's a priority. So if you haven't seen the Office of Pesticide Program updates, you know, we've done a number of new active ingredients, new tools in the toolbox for registrants, ESA compliant. So, you know, in doing the ESA review on these new active ingredients, we're pretty proud of the work, showing that, you know, we can approve pesticides and also do it in a way that's compliant with ESA. So many of these are, you know, initiating consultation and doing, you know, effects determinations and doing the real analysis that it takes to understand how these products can be used safely, not only from a human health standpoint, but from an eco standpoint. So we're pretty proud of the recently proposed and finalized new active ingredients. There's more to come, and you know that our goal is about 30 this year. Registration review. So in addition to registration review, also a pretty big priority. So as folks recall, there's about 800 cases that are due by October of 2026. That involves the universe of cases that were approved, pesticide actions that were approved prior to 2007 and those that occurred after. So of the about 800 cases, we're currently at about 92% that have draft risk assessments. We're hoping to finalize, I would say, virtually all of the draft risk assessments before that date. And then we have a number of interim decisions. We're about 80%, about 163 remain for interim decisions on pesticide registration review. I had the team put this chart together, as we were briefing senior leadership and trying to have folks understand how the pesticide registration review process took and how long it took and how long it takes when you incorporate it needing to consult with the services, and then also all of the opportunities that our science gets to receive public comment. So there's no less than 6 opportunities, sometimes more, where through registration review, we put out the science related to the draft risk assessment. We put the science related to what are the proposed mitigations that we're proposing for this particular chemical. What are the proposed biological evaluation considerations for endangered species that we are indicating that we're going to go to the services. Once we receive comment back from the services from their biops, that goes out for public comment. And then, as I mentioned, once we finish all of the things we need to do related to ESA and endocrine and FIFRA and FFDCA, and we're able to issue a proposed final decision, that goes out for public comment, and then a final decision. And then, of course, the risk mitigation label changes. And each year, about 400 labels are improved and changed as we go through registration review. So this is a continuous process. But just to share the scope of all of the different steps, starting with opening the regulatory docket and putting out a preliminary work plan for what we intend to look at, and a comment period on that, all the way through to the end where the final decision is proposed, and we are going to say that we've completed registration review. So wanted to provide this chart for others. We had been using it for internal purposes. I thought it was a great visual for folks to understand the level of effort when we talk about completing 800 cases, and how much work that has presented in the past and how much work that will continue to present as we continue to reevaluate pesticides that are currently in the marketplace. An example of one of these that just went out was in our commitment to looking at the organophosphates. Dicrotophos went out in April. We released the interim decision for that. We proposed mitigations to reduce human health and ecological risks. It's one of the many organophosphates that we're continuing to prioritize as part of registration review to ensure that we're looking at, worker health, farm worker health, and many of these have also ecological impacts as well. So requiring PPE and drift and runoff mitigations and incident reporting were part of the mitigation efforts that went out for dicrotophos. So other big policy updates, which we're pretty proud about, is the insecticide strategy went out in April. It's the final insecticide strategy. It identified, practical protections for federally endangered and threatened species from insecticides, while also providing, flexibility and giving credit to growers for many of the mitigations that they're already implementing. The strategy identifies mitigations aimed at protecting more than 900 species listed by Fish and Wildlife Service, and that the EPA considers when it registers new insecticides or reevaluates the existing ones. It is a living document. We may amend it as we get, it went out with other documents too, like the mitigation documents, that if we learn of additional mitigation techniques that we think will improve ecological impacts, to the net positive, we'll include those mitigations as options for growers to help protect endangered species. And then we're also developing digital tools consistent with our digital maturity process and digital transformation, developing an app, or first a web app technically, which is a mobile friendly website that growers can go to understand what mitigations are available, what PULA areas are there, and then eventually dealing with internet connectivity, hopefully going to a full app which can be used offline to help growers with their Endangered Species Act compliance, as many of these strategy requirements are translated and then implemented into pesticide labels, for which many of the new active ingredients have those requirements, to consult bulletins live too, and have buffers and spray drift and runoff, and some of the mitigations that you're already seeing on some of those new active ingredient labels that are coming out. We also know that we need to get the word out. Now that we've developed a lot of these policies, we need to provide education to growers and stakeholders about the mitigations. So there's you should see an announcement coming soon for a mitigation webinar, which we're hoping to do in the summer of 2025, probably in the August timeframe at this point, where we're going to have some videos that shows, what does a windbreak look like? What does a vegetative filter strip look like? What are we, when we say these things, what does that really look like on the field, and how would a grower go about understanding their requirements? And I would say, thank you to the stakeholders and the, academics and weed scientists out there who have been helping us understand some of the questions that are developing as a result of the strategies, and for the feedback on the strategies themselves as they were launched this April. We've also most recent update on this, you should have seen the refined listed species mapping, where we are continuing to refine the maps for purposes of pesticide applications, called pesticide use limitation areas, or PULAs, where we are developing a process with input from our other federal agencies, Fish and Wildlife, USDA, University of Georgia. Thank you for the folks that and the shout out that was on the OPP update for the stakeholders that helped, NGOs that helped develop some of these maps. I think this is, some of the best examples of how we can, work together as a community to, I would say, improve the data that is being used to make decisions for pesticide applications in the field. And I think it's a great effort. So we had 12 threatened and endangered species that were developed PULA maps for. We have many others that are coming out in the future, and about 500 of them are scheduled to be refined as part of our consultation and registration evaluation. Many of the new active ingredients, right, are going to have the need to have these pesticide use limitation areas well defined as they are, approved in the coming months as well. So lastly, a shout out to our ability to get out of the office, to meet with growers in the field, to understand what their needs are, their pest pressures, how we can do a better job in delivering these tools. I recently went on this past week, was the IR4 trip, about 40 OPP staff. We went in the DC area, generally right at the Delaware, New Jersey, Maryland, sort of Pennsylvania kind of border area up northeast of DC. We saw some great cropping techniques. Saw a mushroom grow house, which was really interesting and hadn't seen that before. And then we had a precision ag field demo day last week as well. Got to see some of, as you know, I was the co-chair of the emerging ag tech sub-work group for PPDC when I was the deputy office director, and that issue is near and dear to my heart. It's how can we use technology to improve productivity for growing food, and many of the smart tractors, targeted application equipment was out there, and you could just see, how technology is going to help growers. Some of the technologies there was the self-propelled, solar-powered sprayer that sort of autonomously goes through the field, and you're thinking, wow, that's really expensive, but it was about $50,000, which sounds like a lot for you and me, but if you're a pretty big farm operation, that seems affordable. The tractor mounted cameras with the targeted spray technology, which we've given credit for in our strategies, has the possibility of reducing the amount of pesticide that's needed because the camera is identifying the weed and only spraying the weed. Those technologies are pretty impactful, not only from a cost saving for a grower, but also from an ecological standpoint. So, using technology to help sort of marry those two problems and solve for those two problems is pretty impressive. So we had the recent Precision Ag Day demo last week as well, and then we have a number of other trips scheduled. I probably will just stay local, but I probably won't be on many of these other ones. But I like to try to get out to at least one or two crop tours with staff, and many of the staff that I was with on the tour asked some pretty incredible questions, and we got lots of great information that we'll take back to the office and do presentations for. So a shout out to folks that are having us come out and visit with growers as part of the crop tours, and get out to the states and regions that are impacted. So lastly, if you are interested in receiving updates for all the great work that OPP is doing, you can scan the QR code. You can click on the website from the slides in the website for PPDC and sign up for our pesticide program activities updates. And anytime there's something new or exciting, we'll do an announcement and make sure we get the word out. So thanks for listening to me talk about all the amazing work that OPP's been doing, and all the work we're hoping to accomplish this year. And thanks for your interest in the program. With that, I'll stop sharing, and we'll take a couple of questions before we break for lunch.
Thank you, Ed. I see Mark Lame's hand is up.
Yes, thanks. Ed, with all due respect and copious amount of sympathy, I noticed that except for the last couple slides, everything seemed to be related to registration. And I understand the new administration, has those goals, but I'm concerned that there didn't seem to be any goals related to actual environmental protection and health protection. Um, so like monitoring for compliance and enforcement, and even the technical assistance or the pesticide environmental stewardship program uh, uh, activities that used to occur. Are those no longer goals? I mean, is it just a permit shop at this point? And like I say, I have a lot of sympathy. I think I understand a little bit of what's going on here, but I want to hear it from uh, from the agency. What about those other things? I mean, is it only registration from now on? And but I will say congratulations on your insecticide strategy. That's impressive. And I also want to kind of tie all that stuff together with, one of the administrators' goals was to have cooperative federalism. Is that where uh, all of the other um, regulatory and non-regulatory stuff is going to go, and you guys are just going to do permitting and registration now? Long question. Sorry.
Yeah, and I hope you didn't get that sense from my presentation. I understand that, the beginning part of my presentation and definitely part of the administrator's goals is to reduce the backlog. That's something that has been a concern that's been voiced from our stakeholders. But much of the human health, eco benefits, I think my slides demonstrate we're still committed to ensuring that endocrine screening disruption program still in full swing, trying to complete those reviews. So I understand where my presentation talks about, the big priority is permitting reform. That is one of the pillars, but also the pillar before that is clean air, land, and water for everyone. And sort of my very first slide was talking about how we fit into that particular and big goal. So sorry if I gave you the impression we were moving away from any of that. To the contrary, I think we're still committed to that area.
Thanks.
Thanks. Nathan.
Great, thanks, Ed. To start, I just want to say how infuriating it is to see the way EPA employees are being treated and how this agency's mission has been gutted. At the very same time that top brass at EPA have been putting out press releases every day. I just got one in my inbox today that pull quotes from conservative media and conservative legislators extolling how great of a job the administrator has been doing. So first, I just want to say, as sarcastically as possible, that it's great to see the EPA put out a press release every time Lee Zeldin takes a dump, because I can't imagine a better, more efficient use of government resources than the shameless self-promotion of a known schmuck. But switching gears to OPP more specifically, and Ed, what I'm about to say is not directed at you, because I know you need to get approval from higher ups, but I'd say that was the most worthless presentation I have ever seen at PPDC. This agency is on full-on meltdown, and you're just talking about pesticide approval times like it matters. And people are literally leaving your office because they just can't fucking stand it anymore. And I can hazard a guess why you weren't allowed to go into that, but you don't even go into it, and I think it does a disservice to this group. It's terrible to see the attrition and the early retirements that have plagued this office, and we don't even know how many people that is. So far, it appears, that OPP has been spared the worst of Mr. Zeldin's aforementioned
I am the Deputy Director of
taking
Strategic
activities.
Communications, but helping
Um,
facilitate many
I
things
can't say
across
that
the
for others.
conference. So
I
I'm
have
very
other
excited to meet
offices
you
in
and
this
even more
agency.
excited
And am I
Hey, hang on. I just lost audio. I don't know if others did. There was somebody who jumped in, and then I want to make sure people are hearing you, Nathan.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I just want to thank the staff that so far stuck around under these toxic working conditions and say that your presence is welcomed and your work is appreciated. And while I don't doubt the integrity of the career staff at this office, I very much do doubt the integrity of the politicals in this office. And it's no secret that people and wildlife are in for a world of hurt these next few years because of decisions that they will make. And I intend on calling out the agency when it facilitates that. For instance, it's clear that new active ingredients are now a priority for you, and we've certainly noticed that. And I just want to say that in the last 2 months, 60 days, all 4 of the new actives that EPA is proposing to approve are straight up PFAS, forever chemicals. Okay, every single one. Cyclobutyfluorim and diflufenican have soil and aqueous half-lives of over 3 years. Okay, so that means whatever sprayed today, half of that will still be around contaminating soil and water for the next presidential election. I mean, think about that. And that's just the time it takes for one of those bonds to break down. So we're having fluorinated degradates, that'll be around potentially for decades, centuries. I don't even know. That's the frustrating thing is no one knows, not even OPP. And isocycloserum, which exceeds invertebrate levels of concern by more than 1,500. That's like what we see with neonics for a new active ingredient. There are actives right now in registration review that I would rather see being used than these new forever pesticides, which is so ass backwards from how it's supposed to be. New actives are not getting less harmful than older ones, they're getting worse. And we just published a paper on this subject like less than a year ago. And the problem has already gotten worse, considerably worse. It's like PFAS pollution on steroids this past few months. And this office appears to have absolutely no plan to account for the fact that actives are getting more persistent and fluorinated breakdown products are essentially going to be around forever. I mean, if you've got a breakdown product like trifluoroacetic acid that has an aqueous half-life of like over 100 years, and you're saying, as you do in your risk assessments, that it is not a toxicological concern, that's completely out of touch with reality because any pesticide application that leads to chemical degradates that will be around longer than my child will be alive is 100% going to have a negative impact on the web of life. And just because you don't know how that will happen doesn't mean it won't happen. So I really do implore this office to scrutinize the trend of turning pesticides into forever chemicals because it's happening now very often. And you need to adjust your risk assessment practices accordingly because the agency is truly failing right now, and the impacts won't be felt until it's too late to do anything about it. That's all.
Thanks, Nathan. Keith, we'll get the last word and then we'll break for lunch and I'll try to wrap up as well.
Well, first of all, Ed, thanks for the updates. We appreciate the updates. We appreciate the work you're doing. Just, I was wondering, when do you expect to get a BPPD director? Do you have a timeline to fill that position?
The first thing we'll have is an acting, and then we'll have to determine, what our next steps are to fill a permanent. But Keith, I expect to have an acting director, I would say, in the next couple of weeks.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, thanks everyone. Just a couple of points. I do appreciate the shout out to the great staff and OPP that we have here. That I think, given the changing times or the different priorities and the I would say messaging around staff, we're proud of the staff we have here. They are committed, and I think it's evidence that we're continuing to deliver for the American people with the staff we have here. So I appreciate the shout out, Nathan, on that. On the PFAS aspect, I think we may have a disconnect there. I think you're potentially using the European definition of a PFAS chemical. EPA's definition does not include these chemicals as being PFAS chemicals. So we're not approving, at least from our own science, chemicals that are defined as PFAS. So, but we can, talk about that and debate that offline if you'd like. And the risk assessments are there. They're out, in the public. Folks can understand how we arrived at our scientific decision and then challenge them. I think on the whole, stakeholders on both sides have been interested in providing new active ingredients in the past because they do tend to replace some of the existing chemicals that maybe are a little more broad spectrum and haven't gone through ESA review. So I think our goals there are aligned to get new products out the door that have gone through a more current and scientific, rigorous investigation, including all aspects of the statutes that are required. to be looked at, ESA and EDSP in particular. So I would say, we stand behind the science that we've put out on the recent proposals. And again, as I mentioned, many of the things that we do are put out for public comment, and folks can take a look at the science and challenge it like you have, and we'll respond. So I appreciate those comments as well. All right, well, with that, we have a great afternoon session lined up with a number of speakers. So thanks for folks that are talking. I think we've gone a little bit over. I'll see if Jeffrey has gotten his voice back yet, and see how he wants to manage the shortened lunchtime. And apologies for that, but wanted to make sure we save time for that discussion.
Yes, thank you, Ed. I think we should still return at 1 o'clock. Don't leave the meeting, just keep it open and then be back before 1. Does that work for you guys?
Okay. Seeing no, yep, I see some thumbs up emojis. So we'll do that, Jeffrey, and I'll keep logged in, and we'll
Yep.
be back at 1.
Thank you. Thank you.
Jeffrey, can I break in for 1 second?
Yes.
My camera was not working, so I'm going to disconnect everything and I'm going to try to reboot because I can't get my camera to fire for some reason. But I will be back at 1 o'clock.
All right. Thank you. Bye.